Who am I? I'm the key figure in an ongoing internet charade, a plot to conceal the truth about the quality of a show that lasted from the early 90s to the early 2000s and developed a faithful cult following. It's a global conspiracy, actually, with key players in the highest levels of the entertainment industry, and it reaches down to the lives of every man, woman, and child on this planet. So, of course, no one believes me. I'm an annoyance to my superiors, a joke to my peers. They call me Spooky. Spooky Joseph, whose love for a forgotten science fiction show came back after looking for some hope in this world. And now he chases after the possibility to bring in more fans with a webcam and a headset, shouting into the void, or to anyone who will listen, that the fix is in, that a great show is out there. And when it hits for you, it's going to feel like the biggest fuck yeah moment of your life. And we're here to talk about its major motion picture event from 1998. Hi, and welcome to another Bomb Squad vidcast. I am your host and master of ceremony for this evening, Special Agent Joseph Vrenick, FBI.
So, who are you guys, anyhow?
Agents Mulder and Scully, FBI.
And today, I have with me...
Well, looks like 69's your lucky number, bud.
Well, looks like 86 is your lucky number.
Hi, I'm Austin Zwibelmen. Am I under oath?
No, you're not under oath, thankfully. Today, we are going to be talking about The X-Files, or more specifically, The X-Files, Fight the Future, as it's been dubbed by fans of the show, which is one of the most confusing things ever, because, yeah, they titled the movie after the show, and so... yeah, we've had to add a subtitle to it when talking about it. But yeah, no, the hit 1998 movie directed by Rob Bowman. Talking about it because while I was on hiatus, I revisited the show. Also, 20 years ago, in the month that this video will release, the original run of the show ended 20 years ago. So we're celebrating an anniversary on that. The show's old. And I figured revisiting the movie and its sequel would be fun movies to talk about. But first, we are going to start with The X-Files show. The X-Files is highly regarded and a very influential television show that lasted from 1993 to 2002, was then later brought back in 2016 and 2018 and had 2 feature films, so... we're just going to talk about the show. So we're going to start with Austin. So I'm going to ask this a little bit differently because I know you've not seen a single episode of the show. So I'm going to start off with what was your kind of like overall experience with the show through like either pop culture? How are you familiar with the show in that regard? And I sent you a couple of episodes your way, and if you watched them, tell us what you thought.
I did my homework. I watched the Bigfoot tape. I watched the Zapruder film. Those are the episodes, right? The X-Files, it's always been something that I've like heard about. Mostly other people bringing up the names Mulder and Scully. Like, their names are like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern or Captain Picard. You can't get far until you hear them eventually. And then, of course, that theme that Mark Snow did, I think the title is Materia Primoris, and it's been used in all kinds of videos throughout my life. It's the X-Files theme from the show. Best example of one of those I like to bring up is this video called Color Red by Alex Jimenez. It's on YouTube. It sits with about 30 million views. It's a 16-second clip of somebody doing a Google image query for the color red. And down at the bottom, you can see one of those images comes back blue. And you do the patented X-Files zoom in on that. Just memes to that effect, right? You, Joe, you were the first person in my life to actually get me to watch an entire episode of the X-Files. A rare privilege that Game of Thrones still doesn't have. At your behest... Sorry.
I was going to say, I know you're more of a science fiction guy, so this was... I wouldn't say too much of a challenge.
In a land where there's often science fiction or fantasy, I always choose science fiction, baby. That's where the real men go.
Hell yeah.
At your behest, the 3 episodes I've seen before the movie were the pilot, Ice, and Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose. That trifecta led me to understanding a few things about the show. First off, aliens, and parasites that are aliens! Second off, people have psychic powers. But most importantly, Mulder and Scully have worse security than the prison where Jeffrey Epstein died. They are constantly finding irrefutable evidence of the paranormal, only for it to get mostly destroyed in a fire by the Illuminati lizard people. I gotta say, dude, this show is incredibly cinematic for the 1990s. Like, it's hard to get budget numbers on old TV episodes and stuff, but according to an article I dug up from the South Florida Sun Sentinel, for the season after the movie dropped, right? Season 6, I think. The network spent about $2.5 million per episode. That is about $55 million for that entire season. The pilot alone, before the show was worth dick, cost $2 million. It's got that Battlestar Galactica expensive quality to it. I think personally there are some conspiracies that bring people a weird kind of escapism, like Bigfoot and ghosts and psychics, and things that give people hope that there's more going on in life than a big convoluted fight over money and resources. So the show has like a fun campy quality by putting urban legends at center stage, but mixed with the prestige of a sort of FBI deep state classified agent adventure plot. Overall, I'd say I really like the show a lot from what I've seen. The Monster of the Week format, which I know bothers some people, works really well for me, because then when the show decides to like do a two-parter or advance the canon, that just hypes up the gravity of those events. Another show I think does that really well is Rick and Morty. So thank you for showing me these episodes. I'm liking it a lot so far. Back to you.
Hell yeah. So you mentioned the episodes. I'll get into this before I get into my thoughts on the X-Files, because I actually do have some history with it. Like, we mentioned the episodes, and one of them was Ice. I no joke, because I knew the two that I was like, okay, just show this to anybody to try and get them interested in it, is like the pilots, so that they understand like the general structure of it, and then Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, because that's considered like the best episode of the show. Like, it won like multiple Emmys. But it's like, I know you specifically, and one of your favorite movies is John Carpenter's The Thing. And Ice is basically The Thing, but in X-Files form. So I was like, no, this is an Austin episode through and through. So I'm glad that helped sell you on the show.
That explains it.
So, unlike Austin, I do have some prior history with the X-Files. So the show was like a part of my life in some capacity for a long time, mainly through like cultural osmosis. There was that period from like the late 90s to the mid 2000s where like science fiction was both very much influenced by the success and popularity of the show, and was just referenced and parodied through to a huge degree. Every so often you'll get shows like this. It's like in the 90s in particular, had a ton of them, from like Seinfeld to The Simpsons to Friends, and the X-Files was one of them because of like its popularity and influence. As a kid, I never watched an episode outside of catching like the cold open of a rerun when I was like 6 or 7 and turning it off because my folks were weird about what I could watch. My only familiarity with it was through a Fox DVD video commercial at the beginning of my X-Men the movie VHS tape. Fox had a thing with things titled X for a little while. And then there were like several parodies and just like offhanded references in other like movies and TV shows. Like I know the Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders like teaser trailer is very much like parodying the X-Files. So without even like having seen an episode, I was aware of what they are and who Mulder and Scully were. I was old enough to remember the build-up and anticipation to the release of the second movie, I want to believe, and remembered being somewhat interested in seeing it. But again, my parents were still very weird at the time about like what I was allowed to watch at 12 years old. For Christ's sakes, they wouldn't even let me see Hellboy 2 that year. And they were skeptical about whether or not I could see a little movie you all may be familiar with called The Dark Fucking Knight, which was the movie I was looking forward to that entire summer. So, interest in trying to convince them to let me see an X-Files movie was not my priority. As time went on, the public awareness and interest in the X-Files kind of began to fade away, and it came back as it was announced in 2016 that the revival season was happening. And this was at a time when Disney wasn't trying to pretend that it didn't exist and hadn't considered buying Fox yet. So it was readily available on Netflix, and I figured that that moment was the perfect time to try and watch the show. And as you could quickly imagine, it became one of my favorite shows, like right up there with Twin Peaks, Daredevil, And as recently as of last year, because I've got to mention it, the OC. Even as like the quality of the franchise kind of began to wind down after the first movie, I was like enthralled with the stories of Mulder, Scully, Skinner, Byers, Langley, Frohickey, and the rest. It delivered genuine scares and intrigue. The mysteries were more often than not, like fun little discoveries. The lore was fun to learn about, and it genuinely has some of the scariest moments ever put to TV. So scary that the episode Home became infamous for being so disturbing that it only aired on TV once.
Whoa.
And it's basically the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on TV. Like, it's pretty fucked up. And with that being said, the one thing everyone always forgets about this show is that as scary as it might get, it's also one of the funniest shows ever. The comedy in this is like very solid, and people should watch it for that alone.
Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Was a good friend of mine.
It's like, if you need proof, there's just look up X-Files out of context. If that doesn't sell you on the show, then I don't know what will. Despite it not being the best season, the 2016 season is how I wound up discovering one of my favorite shows ever, because they brought it back that year. Unfortunately, the 2018 season kind of killed it for a while. As an apolitical person, the amount of like current political commentary it threw at your face was just enough to completely turn me off from the show for like a very long while. It got so bad to a point where there was like an alien quoting Trump.
We are building a wall. It will be a beautiful, albeit invisible, electromagnetic wall that will subatomically incinerate any probes you attempt to send beyond your solar system. You're free to explore Uranus all you want.
It's funny in hindsight, but at the time it was annoying as fuck. But now that we're like a full year without Trump in office, politics haven't been as crazy, and I'm basically off of social media forever now, and my depression's been like, it's not beaten, but it's getting better. I figured it was time to revisit the show and rediscover something I loved back while the things I love began to currently fade away and lose its impact on me, which led me to a revisit of the movie, which we are going to get into. So let's go all the way back to the late 90s. Specifically 1998, back when Pokemon, Britney Spears, and the Disney Renaissance ruled the fucking world. The year after Titanic, the year before The Phantom Menace, the year of Bayhem with Armageddon, and the year 2 movies based off television shows that were on the air at the time were released. The most successful of those 2 was the Rugrats movie, and behind that was the X-Files, or as it's most commonly known by fans, the X-Files Fight the Future. So, Austin, I gotta ask, what did you think of the X-Files Fight the Future?
It's funny that you brought up Twin Peaks, because I feel like Mulder got his role because he was cast in Twin Peaks. I'm learning all this stuff about the X-Files trying to prep for this, and when I saw that was like the top of his casting thing, I was like, wait a second! I really like the show, Joe, but I feel like the movie feels a lot longer than it actually is. There are pacing problems right off the bat. You have 5 minutes of Fred and Barney from the fucking Flintstones wandering around a dark cave only to find out that the Great Gazoo has picked up meth again. The first fucking time we see Sully on screen is 12 minutes into the X-Files movie. And the Flintstones horror movie sketch and the weird prototype Stranger Things scene that happens before that, it wasn't as much fun as I think the filmmakers thought it would be. Like, did you notice how Rob Bauman had Ward Russell shoot the skirmishes with the alien in that opening scene? Here's what I imagine he said. Alright, what if we shot it handheld? And then we have 2 PAs just beat the shit out of the cameraman while he's trying to shoot the action shots. Alien, go! Boom, boom, boom! Fucking, it looks terrible! But from what I can recall, Chris Carter chose Rob Bauman to be a director because he directed some episodes of the show by that point. I think he was an executive producer, and he developed a shorthand with the actors. So, Man, but I gotta say, I'm not super surprised that Bauman's the guy who went on to direct Reign of Fire and then Elektra. I know that I'm like the last guy in line to say this in history, but it does at times feel like a 2-hour episode of the show, except the Mulder and Scully chemistry, a thing I really like from the show, is worse to watch here because the whole film is about the bad guys trying to drive a wedge between the dynamic duo. One thing I will say, though, is that, like, the big-budget movie moments, for the most part, were really spectacular. That explosion in Dallas had really excellent miniature compositing and great pyro work on set. They did a great little rock of that car with the stunt doubles in there. The B-room shot looks great with the little CGI bees amidst the normal bees, and so did a lot of the subterranean spaceship interior Antarctica stuff. That looked big. The whole bit at the end with the saucer flying out from under the fucking ice is really incredible, like special effects work from '98, back when Houdini wasn't a thing. That must have been hard. But God, those stupid helicopters in the cornfield. Much respect, I gotta pay some mind to David Paris for doing the aerial coordination on those low-flying helicopters. He is a legend, known for doing films like Mission Impossible 1, helicopter in that, Guardians 2, fucking Tenet. But that scene, man, that scene just drags in the final cut. And then it's like the second they're out from under the corn, those helicopters are like, bye! Fucking... I think it's like the conspiracy at the heart of the movie is more exciting conceptually than the journey that Mulder and Scully go on to unravel it. Like, there's not any big-time acting moments for the leads, or any of the new stars that they brought on. The action sequences are oftentimes clunky. The payoff is really neat to look at, but it doesn't feel very cathartic for me, because they're back to square one. And in behind-the-scenes featurettes, you see, like, Rob Bowman and Frank Spotnitz and Chris Carter talking about how they want to make this as accessible for newcomers as it is for fans of the show. And let me say, as a newcomer, this movie was very mid for me. But I'm like a guy who shows up at the party without knowing a fucking single person there and then complains that it sucks. Joe, you're the real deal. Tell me what you think of the X-Files movie.
Okay, so it's like, you mentioned the bit about the square one thing, and it's like, it's kind of understandable because it's like you're kind of a newcomer to this, but you also got to keep in mind, well, I mean, you don't have to because you're a newbie, but it's like if you've seen the show, you got to keep in mind, this is coming off of season 5, literally a month after the 5th season ends, which is kind of insane to think about, and they've shut down the X-Files. Actually, no. Mulder and Scully get kicked off of the X-Files, and then they burn the X-Files down. So,
what?
Yeah, that's how season 5 ends.
That explains the ending.
Yeah, so they reopen the X-Files by the end of this episode. They're back to where they started, and season 6 it starts off kind of rough because they're not assigned to the X-Files. Oh man, that. Season 6 is fine. I'll probably talk about the quality of those later seasons later in the I Want to Believe vidcast. So my general thoughts on the X-Files Fight the Future. This is honestly one of those movies where I wish I was a certain age at the time of its release to have been able to have seen it the first I wish I would have been able to see this for the first time opening night in a theater as the show aired and with a crowd of X-Files fans, because I can just feel the hype and excitement fans must have felt at the time to have a big budget X-Files film that was both its own thing and a continuation of the show, which had finished the season that leads into the movie only 1 month before the movie releases. It's nuts in that retrospect, but especially at the time, it had to have been really fucking nuts that this happened. This to me feels like the 90s equivalent of an MCU movie, because it definitely feels like crowd will cheer here moments were specifically written into the script on this one, and they all work well if you're a fan of the show. The highlight for me in that regard is when everyone's favorite conspiracy goofballs, the lone gunmen, show up to break Mulder out of the hospital. their first moment on screen is blocked out and framed in a way for the fans to go wild. But the movie sprinkles in so much for like fans who have been following since the beginning, from cool intros of fan favorite characters like the cigarette-smoking man and assistant director Skinner, to the continuations of the Black Goo and Syndicate stories that fans have followed throughout the first 5 seasons, and to what is arguably the greatest Scully moment and one of the most badass moments a female character has ever had in any medium ever.
I need this building evacuated and cleared out in 10 minutes. I want you to call the fire department and have them block off the city center in a 1-mile radius around the building. 10 minutes? Don't think. Just pick up that phone and make it happen.
As a fan movie, this works perfectly in that regard. As a movie itself, I think it works as its own little science fiction thriller about a government cover-up of an alien colonization plot. Depending on how casual viewers go into it, they might be in for a very good time if they view it as just a standalone thing with big picture stuff that they could pick up on if they decide that this movie is a good selling point for them to try and watch the show. It's got a solid little mystery for pretty much anybody. The suspense moments hit. It's got some solid action in it. Rob Bowman directed the more action-heavy episodes of the show. It was, in my opinion, a smart pick to have him direct this out of anyone else who worked on the show. Minus a few wonky-looking computer effects, like I know Joke laughed out loud at the effect used when Mulder and Scully fall onto the UFO at the end. It kind of looks a little silly. This is an X-Files fan's wet dream when it comes to art direction and special effects. It's estimated back when the show was on the air, the X-Files cost about like $2.5 million per episode. So with the show being like a major success, it was no surprise that Fox threw the movie a budget that it would take an entire 24-episode season. And both Chris Carter and Rob Bowman used it to their full advantage because the scale of both the story and the special effects feel like a major event. Like, even as a non-fan, you cannot deny that the scale of this feels big. Outside of this, this is just a fun, big-budget episode of The X-Files. A fun time for fans with a story worthy of the show's name, and a hopeful first glimpse for people looking to get into the show. But that's just my silly opinion. So we're gonna move on to a fun question. We all like those fun questions. So we're gonna talk about moments. Austin, my guy, were there any specific moments in this movie that stood out to you as a favorite?
You know how you do that, like, movies thing? It's just that, but moments.
Moments.
Yes! I heard there's like a whole internet page that's everything that's supposed to have referenced the X-Files. I think it's on the X-Files wiki. And apparently, I couldn't get a copy of Independence Day this afternoon to verify this, but there's some point in Independence Day where like all the TVs have gone out or something and somebody's on the phone in the background and says, yeah, I know, I like the X-Files too. You know, Independence Day referenced the X-Files. Well, one of my favorite scenes in this also involves Independence Day. It's probably Martin Landau deciding that he's going to introduce himself to Mulder by taking a piss in the same alleyway as him, right onto an Independence Day poster. It's just incredible seeing fucking Bela Lugosi in this movie, and the way he comes in is just so like, hey kid, you want to know the secrets of the universe? Pissing in an alley. And the film, I also like this as like a writer. The film having the sheer balls to suggest that like a shadow government would sort of fabricate cheese pizza charges against a person that they want to silence. Like, you don't see that in fiction, people going for that angle much. From a conceptual level, I thought it was very gritty. I was like, ooh, that's nice. And man, I gotta go back to that explosion in Dallas. I recently watched Die Hard 3, the movie where they blow up a shitload of stuff in New York. And it brought me back to that crazy level of like, big action stunts, hard as fuck to coordinate, very dangerous, big payoff. I really liked that explosion in the beginning. It kind of knocked some sense back into the movie after those 12 minutes of I don't know what the fuck is going on. It really like roped me back in.
Hell yeah. I guess before I get into my answer, you mentioned the stuff about the syndicate there and how they'll screw people over. that was one of the big things about like trying to recommend episodes for you for this was I tried to like find episodes that would have tied in like a little bit more into the film. Like it's very like loose stuff, but problem with that though is one, a lot of them are like 3 two-parter episodes. So I was not going to put you through that by like recommending multiple like 2-parter, 3-parter episodes. And also, he's not in the movie, but the problem with recommending like Syndicate Black Goo episodes is part of like understanding some of those episodes is you'd have to know who the character Alex Krycek is. Like understanding who that is very important. He's ultimately the second like main villain of the show, essentially.
Huh. Never heard that name.
But yeah, it's a very long story that with that Alex Krycek. So favorite moments for me. Easily my favorite moment is the "You saved me" monologue from Mulder.
But you saved me. As difficult and as frustrating as it's been sometimes, your goddamn strict rationalism and science have saved me 1,000 times over. You kept me honest. You made me a whole person. I owe you everything. Scully, you owe me nothing. I don't know if I want to do this alone. I don't even know if I can. And if I quit now, they win.
There are 2 camps of fans, the non-Roms and the shippers. You either want to see Mulder and Scully like remain together or just remain platonic friends / business partners, or you're someone like me who can go either way. And this monologue is the ultimate example of saying I love you, not just on the show, but in just writing in general for me. The I love you without explicitly saying I love you line or monologue. No matter which side you're on about the argument, you cannot deny that everything was leading to this moment in one way or another. It's so epic that there are only 2 people I would say this monologue to. My best friend and to whoever I'm dating on the night that I am going to propose to them. My luck in the latter department hasn't been the best. That being said, I found that one person I would call my best friend, and I've told her that in writing and face-to-face. If you want to make someone feel special in your life, recite that monologue to them. If I had to pick a different moment, it's probably between the bombing at the beginning or the big bee swarm followed by the helicopter chase, even if that chase is kind of iffy. The stuff with the UFO is clearly where most of the budget went towards, but the creativity and suspense that they were able to get from like those moments before that are spectacular and are also very clear signs that they knew where to put their the money for this. So I'm actually going to kind of skip the next question because, I mean, you kind of stated it in your thoughts of the X-Files. So, and I honestly don't really have much in terms of trivia, except for one thing, and it involves, funnily enough, the first time that this movie played on television, and an X-Files spin-off show that only lasted 1 season. Not only did the X-Files predict something, but it also delayed this movie being aired on television. I'm going to kind of like take you on a journey here. So there's a spin-off show that happened like around when season 8 was on the air, right before season 9, called The Lone Gunman, which featured, The Lone Gunman. So are you familiar with the pilot episode of The Lone Gunman, Austin?
I know he likes the Ramones. That's about it.
So the pilot episode of The Lone Gunman is the lone gunmen have to stop a terrorist bombing threat where a group of terrorists plan to hijack a plane and crash it into the World Trade Center.
Oops!
This was 6 months before 9/11.
No!
6 months!
No! Oh my god. They censored so many things that weren't vaguely even related. Just buildings being destroyed. They did it for Pokemon, but that is just on the dot. The thing that happened.
They, no joke, predicted it 6 months before it happened, and here's how it ties into like the movie being aired on television. Because of 9/11, they wound up delaying the release of the movie because of the bombing at the very beginning of the movie. So, long story short, an X-Files spin-off show predicted 9/11.
Play the theme. Vince Gilligan is a psychic chess grandmaster who knows about the syndicate who did 9/11.
Yeah. All right. So that's really all I have in terms of trivia. So we'll just move on to final thoughts. So what are your final thoughts there, Austin?
Do you know what they call the little boards and apple boxes that that Mulder Scully that the Scully had to stand on when they were filming because of the height difference between the two?
I don't know what.
I think they called them Jilly boards just on that set.
That's hilarious.
One around.
Yeah, I knew there was like a height difference between the two, and she'd always have to like stand on them. I didn't know they called them that though.
For X-Files, Fight the Future, there's plenty of spectacular moments that justify this movie's existence. But for me, they felt few and far between. Very little of this outside the action feels like a big enough upgrade. Like, the scope of the story was huge, I'll give you that. But a lot of the plot progression happens by way of fantastic conveniences. Like, it's not a bad movie by any means. But it is often boring and quite silly. But if you want to hear Mulder say shit, this must be the place. I'm sure fans of the series get a lot more mileage out of those scenes with the cigarette-smoking man and the syndicate and the greatest act of cuckolding ever to grace the screen in the bee. The fucking bee.
That goddamn bee.
I didn't even do the legwork to get to this point, and that bee gave me the bluest balls I've ever had. I've never had balls that blue.
Again, this is like one of those things where I wish I was a certain age when this movie came out, because I could already just imagine just the amount of groans from X-Files fans in the theater.
Thank God it exists as a deleted scene where you can watch them not only make out, but she hops up into his lap and they walk off like they're about to go do the sex making. So, future!
As far as my final thoughts go, yeah, no, I like it. I mean, I'm an X-Files fan. I'm not really contractually obligated to like it, but I do like it. As far as who I'd recommend it to, it's definitely more of a fan movie. I think there's enough in it, if you're not a fan, like, to where if you'd watch it, you'd probably get, like, a little something out of it, but there's definitely a hell of a lot more to get out of it if you had seen the show, like, prior, and kind of understand, like, the history of what's going on. So, I guess if you want to watch the movie without that history, go right ahead. You might just not get a whole ton, but if you want to watch the show, hell yeah, I recommend you do that. And you know what? You might even like the movie a hell of a lot more if you do. And that's honestly all I have to say, so we are going to wrap this episode. Oh, I almost forgot one thing, because I just remembered that I mentioned this earlier. In this movie, there is an actor named Gary Grubbs. He plays the fire marshal at the beginning. And now, actor Gary Grubbs, and because I haven't done this in a hot minute, he's famous for playing a very different character. A character named Gordon Bullets. And if you know that name, it's because Gordon Bullets is a character on season 4 of the hit television show The OC, baby! I did one in!
Oh! Shit!
Play the theme! He actually shows up twice in the X-Files. He's got like a different appearance on an episode of the show, which is kind of funny to me.
I think this whole movie might be a Lost flashback because the opening is John Locke sacrificing himself to a soda machine. That's how he ends up on the island.
Oh yeah, that's right. He was on Lost. God. But yeah. That was our thoughts on X-Files Fight the Future. So let us know what you thought of this episode down in the comments below, and let us know what you think. Have you seen X-Files Fight the Future? Did you like it? Would you recommend it to fans? Have you seen the show? Do you like the show? Comment below, let us know. hit the like button so we know how much you like us. Hit that subscribe button so we know how much you love us. Hit the bell icon for updates on when we upload new videos. Be sure to check us out on Patreon. Got a hell of a lot of cool stuff down there. Check us out on Twitch. We got Spotify, Apple Music. We have all of our podcast stuff listed on there. So many things. I'm just throwing my hands out all over the place. I don't know. I guess I'm just excited to be back. There we go.
And this is the tip of the X-Files iceberg.
Hell yeah. Stay tuned because we will have one more vidcast later this month. We will be talking about the X-Files, I Want to Believe, the sequel to the hit film. And we'll be sure to, I don't know. We'll let you know when it's coming out. Why not? You'll get that special notification in the mail. The cigarette smoking man will deliver it. I don't know. Yeah, no. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm so happy to be back, and we will see you later.
Two men alone cannot fight the future.
Scully, I found the bomb.